the whole of human history is full of secrets and mysteries. In fact, even now, in the age of science and technology, our whole world order is causing thousands of questions, many of which cannot be fully answered by scientists. Time Puzzle Crew tries to uncover some of those mysteries surrounding the mysterious places of Kazakhstan.
The city of Kyzylorda is the center of the region. Now its population is 270,000 people. The climate here is sharply continental. In the summer, the temperature reaches 42 degrees above zero. In winter, it drops to -40. Right through Kyzylorda flows one of the main rivers of the Semi-Rechia, Sirdarya. The city stretches for 10 kilometers along its banks on both sides. 255 kilometers away from the Baikonur Cosmodrome is located. Now life in Kyzylorda is quite measured, but very few people know that some 200 years ago there were multiple military conflicts and bloody battles. The ancient buildings of the city store in their walls a lot of secrets, which has almost no mentions in historical sources. Watch in today's episode. Well, you know, these enters, exits. It's pre-Soviet period. But we have heard, but there are no such documents in the archives. Who fought for supremacy in the region? Kokand residents tried to return Akhmechet. For this purpose, a 7,000 army was sent here. The Kokand army lost many soldiers and was forced to retreat. What secrets are kept in the old buildings of Kyzylorda? As far as I can remember, the old people said that all this was connected with a fortress by underground passages. The amazing story of a small city full of wars, exploits and secrets in this episode of the Time Puzzle. The Silk Road was the reason for the creation of many cities. This place was the key in the region. There were many military clashes over the territory. Eventually, the fortress was founded. Houses, a school, an Orthodox church and a Muslim mosque were built. However, only a few people know what secrets are kept in these buildings. My name is Andrei Slozhin and now I am in Kyzylorda and you are watching The Time Puzzle. The Silk Road connected many countries: China, India, Europe, Persia and Arabia. This road passed through the territory of modern Kazakhstan. The Silk Road reached its peak in the 18th, 19th centuries, passing through Central Asia. Few people know that Kyzylorda was founded thanks to this trade road, but in the beginning it had a completely different name. The Fortress of Ark Mosque was founded in 1818 by Omar Khan, the 7th ruler of the Uzbek dynasty of Ming of the Kokand Khanate. There were 3 wells, 2 mosques, madrasas and about 50 houses. All this was enclosed by fortified walls, the height of which reached 11.5 meters. A moat was dug around the fort and it was filled with water. The opinions of historians about the year of the foundation of the fortress diverge. Some believe that this outpost was erected in 1817. Other sources indicate 1818, 1820 years. There are also disagreements about where exactly they were built. Some believe that the fortification was first built on the left bank of the Sirdarya River, and a year later, the Ark Mosque was moved to the right bank. Others claim that the fortress was immediately built on the right bank in 1818. In any case, they both agree that the outpost stood in a huge hollow called Bekali Koga and was surrounded on all sides by reed and shrub thickets. These natural obstacles were not the only way to protect the fortification. It was called Akhmechet because there was a white mosque in the middle of the fortress. It was surrounded by a moat, the width of which reached 11 meters, and the walls were 11 meters high, and the lower part of the walls, their width was 10.5 meters, and the upper part 4 meters. Such a huge wall. And in every wall there were cannons and people. There were 400 soldiers who lived in this fortress. The Kokandis who lived here raided the Kazakh owls, stole cattle and took prisoners. Dissatisfied with this state of affairs, the Kazakhs assembled detachments and resisted the conquerors. This was written by a Russian scientist, ethnographer Ivan Anichikov and colonel of the Russian army Alexei Maksheyev. The first described the life and struggle of the Kazakh Batyr Jan Koja. The second spoke about the confrontation of Nomokamed Uli in the book Description of the Lower Reaches of the Sirdarya. More detailed information about the national liberation struggle of the Kazakhs and Jan Koji Batyr is given in Kyrgyz steppe of the Orenburg department of Lothar Meyer, German chemist, corresponding member of the Petersburg Academy of Sciences. In each of these works, to some extent, the reason because of which the Kazakhs constantly rebuffed the Kokand is indicated. For each family there were 6 rams per year, 24 bags of coal and 4 carts of saxaul. But as you know, it was easy for the rich to pay, but it was very difficult for the poor to pay the tax. And so in our regions there were riots against the Kokand Khanate. And when the Governor-General Perovsky came here, the Kazakh people took it as a release and supported this campaign on the Ark Mosque. In the storming of the fortress, 2,850 people participated, 2,300 of which were soldiers and officers of the Russian army and 500 Kazakhs who acted as scouts. On the 3rd of July 1853, the army approached the walls of the fortress. Perovsky divided his army into 5 batteries, which surrounded the fortress and began a siege. In the armament of Perovsky army were not only experienced warriors, but powerful at the time artillery. Perovsky had a total strength of 2,500 people. They included 1,500 cavalry, 17 cannons and missile artillery, a battalion and a mine battalion. There the ratio of troops was large and he had more equipment. In many respects, Perovsky was helped by intelligence data obtained from local Batyrs. So in one of these sorties, it was possible to clarify that the Kokand residents had only 3 cannons, which they transferred from the tower to the tower. In addition, from the walls of the fortress, grenades constantly flew towards the besiegers. On July the 8th, along the walls of the fortress, fire began from all the guns. 160 projectiles and 40 rockets were fired. But these shots did not cause serious damage to the 8-meter adobe walls of the fortification. In addition, the Kokand people fired their guns from them. In 1852, Blaramberg hiked here, but his campaign was repulsed. And in 1853, thoroughly prepared, the Governor-General Perovsky himself came here. He had 2 ships which were requested from Sweden, the ship Obruchev and the ship Perovsky. Despite the obvious superiority of the troops of Perovsky in armament and strength, the defenders of the fortress continued to be fiercely resisted. When the Kokand people ran out of grenades, they began to fire with leather bags filled with gunpowder and also snipped from the walls of the fortress. The fortress held despite the constant bombardment. Perovsky wrote a letter and sent him to Ark Mosque with the messenger. The text said that he does not want to destroy the walls of the fortification completely, as sooner or later he will still get it and he will not destroy his wall but enter through the gate. In addition, Perovsky offered the Kokand residents not to resist and leave the fortress. In response, the Kokand residents made a sortie out of the fortress on the night of July the 20th and captured 2 soldiers. They were executed, showing contempt and fearlessness. In response, Perovsky appointed an assault on July the 28th, 25 days after the siege began. When he came here, he gave them time of 15 days so that they liberated the city and left. But they did not give up and there was a battle. They were thrown back, they fled from here, and 1,500 people came to support them, but they too were defeated. On the night of July the 28th, 1853, the northeastern wall was blown up. In the resulting gap, the soldiers went to the assault. 40 minutes later, the fortress fell. The commandant of Ark Mosque, Muhammad Vali, was killed in a fight. The losses of the Kokand residents amounted to 212 people, of whom 206 were men, 4 women and 2 children. Perovsky lost 13 soldiers during the assault and 4 more during the siege. The fortress was taken. But the fight for it did not end there. Kokand residents tried to return Ark Mosque. For this purpose, a 7,000 army was sent here. The siege began on August the 24th, 1853 and lasted until December. The Kokand army lost many soldiers and was forced to retreat. No matter how desperately the Kokands fought to keep their outpost, all their attempts were crowned with a crushing defeat. August the 31st, 1853, for the storming and taking the fortress Ark Mosque, Perovsky received a letter of gratitude. In the spring of 1854, the construction of the fort began here, and the adjacent territory, over 80,000 square kilometers in size, was called the Perovsky district, where the main inhabitants were Kazakhs, almost 180,000 people. In the same year, by the decree of the Empress, the Ark Mosque fortress was renamed to the Fortress of Perovsk. A new period began in the life of the province near the Serdaya River. The first thing was to restore the walls of the old fortress. In 1867, the county already consisted of 2 branches, 23 balis and 186 auls. Perovsk itself was constructively built up. New buildings were built, irrigation ditches were built, areas and gardens were set. The architecture of the city of Perovsk of the 19th century is very similar to the buildings in the city of Orenburg. During construction, the same materials were used. Perovsky, as Governor-General of Orenburg, could not have been unaware of the underground passages under the city. The order on their laying was given by the first governor of the city, Ivan Nepluyev. The construction of underground tunnels in Orenburg began in the second half of the 18th century, and as you know, Perovsky became governor of Orenburg and Samara provinces in 1851. And once Perovsky led the construction of underground tunnels in one city, it is quite possible that he used this experience in Perovsk. The film crew of the program asked about the secret dungeons in the state archive of the Kyzylorda region. Well, you know, these enters and exits, it's pre-Soviet period, but we have heard, but there are no such documents in the archives. Then, well, you know, these fortification documents, they're of classified nature. In order to understand this riddle, we decided to study in more detail the architecture of the oldest buildings in Kyzylorda. On October the 15th, 1855, the first Orthodox church in the town of Perovsk was opened. It was just a marquee where church liturgies were held. Later, adobe church was built. But because of the Serdaya spill, the unreliable adobe was blurred and the building became unusable. Then in 1868, the church was built of strong burnt brick. Since then, it has not changed its appearance. There is a bell tower in front. The height of the building is 18 meters. The temple was designed for 250 to 300 parishioners. At the church there is a site. Now it is planted with trees, and before here there were vineyards and a garden. Preparing for the program and studying the information, I realized one thing. The data about this monument of architecture varies greatly. Each historian tells in his own way, and we met Archpriest Vitaly, who at one time studied the archives of the Kazan Temple of the Holy Virgin, so he could tell us the real information about this church. First they built the adobe church, but here we have the river Darya near, which was poured, and the river was poured, and the walls of this temple were destroyed. Therefore, it was decided to put this particular temple here, which now stands today, until today. A little later in the city, they began to build a mosque. It is located near the Orthodox Church. Its construction began in 1875. It lasted for about 3 years.
Себебі мешіттің тарихына үңілсек, 1878 жылы Айтбай.
If you recall the history of the mosque, in 1878 it was founded by Айтбай Baltabay Tegi. This is said in many sources, and according to other sources, it was built not by Айтбай, but by his father. So the father built a mosque and named it in honor of his son Айтбай.
Септік нәрсе, әрине, қай жерде мұсылмандар болса, сол жерге құлшылық орны, рухани ошақ ретінде.
The reason for the construction of the mosque was very important. Where Muslims live, there must necessarily be a place for prayer. So the founders of the mosque were Baltabay or his son Айтбай. The mention of the construction of the Айтбай Mosque, and now the mosque wears his name, was found in church books. Father Pilimon, the first priest of the temple, witnessed the erection of both religious buildings. Then he kept notes from the parish tent. He writes, Muslims with the beginning of Айтбай Baltabayev built their mosque fast, and the Orthodox Church, laid down simultaneously with the mosque in 1878, was built slowly. What was associated with the delay in the construction of the temple is still unclear. Father Pilimon did not bring it to the annals. Church books at that time were the only documents that recorded the history of the city. According to their data, in Perovsk at the time lived 5,000 people plus a military garrison. Special attention is paid to the census of the names of officials and military commanders. In church books in those years there was no the registry office, therefore it performed the function of the registry office. That is, records were kept of birth, death and marriage, and there are a lot of requests for us on the basis of genealogy. That is, people are looking for their ancestors. They try to recover their genealogy, and we take a lot of information from these books. Another key building is the former barracks of Perovsk. It was built in 1896. The building material used in the construction of all three main structures of Perovsk was brick, which, according to some historians, produced here, according to others, was imported from Kazalinsk. Nevertheless, this is not the only thing that unites these structures. The facilities are located within a 5-minute walk. Most likely, this arrangement of buildings was not chosen by chance. The first specialized buildings for troops were still known in ancient Rome. The first barracks in Spain appeared in the 16th century, in France in the 17th century, in Russia in the 18th. Now there is a gallery where works of local artists are exhibited. But in the 19th century there were military bunks here. The main customer of the barracks was the Orenburg General Governorship. This is how the building is described by Lieutenant General Alexander Gaines in his diary of 1866 journey to Turkestan. We drove up to Kubasov's post. It consists of a barracks of ridiculous construction, something like a stables, with an inexplicable tower on top and narrow long loopholes on the main building. Kubasov's post guards the ferry at Fort Perovsky through the Sirdarya, which is not far from there and is divided into Jamandarya and Karauzyan. At the picket, the Cossacks live, obliged to transport everyone on the iron boat that is here. Judging by the description of the General Lieutenant, this appearance and project of the barracks was not similar to the technology and design of similar buildings of that time. The architecture of the Orthodox Church in Perovsk also stood out from the general mass. In its structure, it is a Byzantine temple. It is in the form of a cross and is unique in that it has survived to our days as if from a foundation. Even the roof, which now exists, although it requires a little investment to replace it, has not changed since then. The only thing that we have gilding, and in order not to spoil its historical value, we covered it from above. so we could do it. And so the temple is very unique in that it is in the form of a cross. It is the only one in Kazakhstan according to such historical values. Well, according to the spiritual value too, which was not destroyed and now has survived to this day. The temple was built according to the project of the architect Yesakov. The engineer Kalinin supervised the process of the church's erection. Until December 1906, the church was under the jurisdiction of the military department, after which it became the jurisdiction of the diocese. In history, this is a rare case when a religious institution was under the patronage of the military. Oddly enough, the money for the construction of the temple was found quickly. The construction of the church costed the city 35,000 rubles, of which 5,000 were collected by parishioners. The rest have allocated from the treasury of Perovsk. There were 9 bells in the temple. The largest is 136 puds, or 2,227 kilograms. Where the bells disappeared, there is no reliable information, but now the modern bells are installed on the bell tower of the Holy Kazan Cathedral of the Mother of God icon. Subsequently, with the advent of Soviet power, the temple did not escape the fate of most religious buildings. Most of the churches were used as stables, warehouses, dormitories, and many were simply destroyed. The church in Kyzylorda was abolished. In 1937, the building was given a local history museum. The frescoes in the temple are simply broken with axes. Only the floor remained untouched. The floor in this temple is lined with cast iron tiles. This was done because the parishioners were mostly military. They wore boots with spurs. Wooden floor would quickly become worthless. Cast iron tiles were laid immediately after the construction of the walls. Such a decision was rational. A similar cast iron floor is in the Moscow Kremlin. Near the church were barracks where the families of the military lived. Later, in front of the church, a school was built for the children of the servicemen. So for a short period in Perovsk, there were 2 temples of various faiths. It is interesting that the presence of a mosque in the city played an important role as a guarantor of security. Another feature of the mosque, our ancestors say that when roaming from one locality to another, they first sent messengers to see if there is a mosque there. If there is a mosque, we will spend the night there for a day or 2 and so on. Because there will be a place for namaz, for prayer. They believed that where the mosque is, there is no theft, this place is safe, there will be no threat. And if there is no mosque there, our ancestors believed that there people should not stop. They can be dangerous. The Aydbay Mosque, as well as the Orthodox Church, was built on the donations of local residents. Then they collected just a huge amount for that time, 40,000 rubles. The main contribution to the donation for the construction was made by the merchant from Bukhara, Aydbay Baltabayev. According to historical data, Aydbay personally engaged in this search for construction managers. His choice fell on the masters of Iskan and Kamal. They were looking for specialists from Turkestan. Further special instructors were invited from Bukhara and created all conditions for them to serve the people. Originally, the building was built like a mosque, but at the same time there was a historical madrasa. So according to the construction of the mosque, according to materials, a brick, one can see the spiritual and historical appearance. Notice 2 absolutely identical walls, but with one huge difference. This wall is almost 150 years old, and this one was reconstructed in 2011-2012. The difference can be felt only by hearing. Here, the sound is sonorous, but here it is more deaf. The building of the mosque contained more than 500 believers. There was also madrasas here. In 1980, the architects from the Project Restauracija Institute became interested in the mosque. They conducted a series of studies, studied the material from which the building was built, and inspected the iron roof. This was done in order to bring the mosque to the list of architectural monuments of the Sirdarya cities. 2 years later, the building was added to the list of monuments of history and culture of Republican significance of Kazakhstan and taken under the supervision of the state. But few people know that this mosque is unique in its kind. After reconstruction, the mosque looks quite modern. Only these 4 columns remained unchanged. They were just painted. But there is one more interesting feature. Here is a real well. It is here, that's right here. There is still water. This upper part of the well, it was also reconstructed. There are those bricks at the bottom. They are from 1878. According to the assumption of historians and local historians, the vault is located behind the well, which connects the Orthodox temple, mosque and barracks building. There is also the opinion that a small branch led to the old bazaar, which is located just in the middle between these 3 buildings. Another feature of this mosque is that there is a well under the mosque. It is inside the mosque, in a place, in a depth opposite the entrance, on the left wing of the mosque. Still, this well is called an underground road, because together with this mosque there are several historical places that are of great importance for the city. To establish communication with these places and for security, and on the other hand to avoid any trouble, this is what this underground road was built for. According to other sources, the purpose of constructing this well was, in case of any invasions of enemies or a danger from outside, it could be hidden there for a while. Hence, there is a place for you to hide temporarily. From the point of view of the construction of military fortifications, such an underground passage was justified from several sides. Firstly, it is a constant access to fresh water. The second is quick evacuation. Third, the lightning movement of troops unnoticed from one part of the city to another. It is logical to assume, having collected all the facts about the construction of these 3 structures and the speed of money collection, as well as the direct control of Perovsky, that this is not a spontaneous building of the fort, but a clear and thorough plan of the commander. When Perovsky conquered the fortress, under the barracks on the other side of the coast of the Sirdarya was an underground passage. So it was like a hiding place. It was used for military purposes, so the elders state. And the fact that this underground passage was used for military purposes, for this it is necessary to carry out archaeological work, research. There are some inconveniences from the point of view of natural geography, because the river of the Sirdarya flows in 500 meters from this place. So underground tunnels must be filled with water. In addition, this well had one more purpose besides providing fresh water. The temperature in the summer month in Kyzylorda is not really over 45 degrees. Inside the mosque, it is much lower. The temperature difference can be easily felt. Another feature of the mosque is the well, which is inside the mosque. The well contributes to the proper preservation of the air inside the mosque. Second, you know that our region is hot. This is not a mountainous area. In those days, there were no modern air conditioners. Therefore, this was taken into account. Therefore, when the summer heat came into the mosque, the coolness from the well would purify the air of the mosque. This can be felt at any time when you come from the street inside. The mosque, as well as the church during the rule of the Soviets, was also abolished. The fact that the building was not demolished was largely contributed to its fundamental: strong walls, high ceilings, convenient location in the city center, and possible underground passages. Despite the fact that there were no data on the construction of dungeons in the archives, rumors of this are among the Kyzylorda people. That's what the old residents of the city told. There were passages in height 2.5 sajans, laid out with burnt bricks, the same as used for the construction of a mosque, a church, and a barracks. There it was even possible to drive a small wagon harnessed by a small horse. Only the leadership of the city, higher military ranks, and rich merchants could get into the underground passage. Almost every native inhabitant of the city has heard of these secret passages. Vladimir Tolokonnikov was no exception.
Я коренной житель Кызылорды, родился в Кызылорде.
I am a native of Kyzylorda. I was born in Kyzylorda in 1946. In the distant 1923 of the last century, my father was born here. Grandpa, of course, was from Russia. As far as I can remember, the old people said that all this was connected with the fortress by underground passages. There is a uniqueness such that there is an underground passage linking the mosque and the church. Between the Alisade, the school, and between here is another ancient building, we have barracks here, which is now used here on the river bank. Here is this triangle, it is between them, an underground passage. And was someone there? Have you seen it in general? No, I've seen it. I have been there. But now Darya, it is silted up. There is water. I've been there. When the building here was destroyed, it fell down. It was made of brick vaults. They still exist. In addition to underground passages, according to Archpriest Vitaly, there is another mystery which is kept by the Orthodox Church. According to the priest, under the foundation of the church, there can be another room. There is one more rumor that we have another temple under the temple, but we cannot find the door to it. That is, it is necessary to do some kind of geological exploration, which we tried. I dig through several places. We have a foundation. It is made. It is also unique. It is a brick foundation. That is, imagine the building itself, meter walls. The building itself stands on a brick foundation. It's like a ladder, in this order to a depth of 3.5 meters. Such statements of the archpriest are not groundless. While carrying out repairs on the territory of the church, Father Vitaly picked up the slabs near the walls and found another vault made of bricks. Without venturing to excavate further, the rector of the temple simply removed the sand, looked at the building that was opened, and packed everything into place. In this limit here we dug to a depth of 3.5 meters, and the foundation, which is, it seemed to us that it was so chopped off. In fact, it comes here to this place. That is, it turns out like this, like a ladder. Here, that is, like this. So it is depicted. Here it is, and below. That is, every brick, every row that is complex, it's like this. On this distance, it goes down. And it turns out, theoretically, there is another underground temple there. Yes, theoretically, there is a temple that lies here along the entire perimeter. That is, from this, as it is difficult to see, and there is also a temple inside. And see just this moment, there is the passage, the one that is exactly between the connections with the mosque and the fortress. That's just the underground passages were exactly here. You could go through. Another unusual architectural feature of the holy Kazan temple of the icon of the Mother of God is the foundation. It is made of bricks, but it is designed in such a way that it is not exposed to destructive natural factors. So thoughtful, this means that this foundation system of the temple, it is so clever that the root of the tree, it cannot invade this foundation and destroy it. It goes along the edges as a brick is built along it, but inside to destroy, not a single brick destroyed inside. The film crew of the program continued to search for the mysterious dungeons of Kyzylorda, but on the assurances of absolutely all the respondents, now it is almost impossible to do this. Gathering the facts together, we can confidently say that it is necessary to continue researching the 3 oldest buildings in Kyzylorda. Perhaps the find of mysterious dungeons will fill the white spots in the history of the city, and maybe even write new pages. Unfortunately, it's impossible to get to secret passages under Kyzylorda now. They say that the last entrance was immured in 2014, but let us hope that someday Kyzylorda dungeons will still be studied. My name is Andrei Slozhin, and you watched The Time Puzzle. See you!